Thank you for taking the time to learn about the Vermont Communication Support Project. If an individual has a disability that affects communication, the VCSP can be an incredibly valuable resource in helping them participate and engage effectively in their hearings in civil, family, probate, and small claims court, as well as in their state and attorney meetings. At this time, the VCSP is not able to provide services to defendants in criminal court. However, VCSP can support victims and witnesses in criminal proceedings. When people are involved with the judicial process like a hearing or meetings associated with their case, it is important that they are able to comprehend and communicate as effectively as possible. Let's take a closer look at communication. Disability affects communication in many different ways. Some barriers to effective communication are straightforward, like comprehension, literacy, and memory, but other less obvious barriers, like the inability to regulate emotion, inability to focus, inability to prioritize information, can also be a result of disability and equally challenging when it comes to communicating effectively, especially in a difficult situation. A communication support specialist can help eliminate some of those barriers by working with the client to offer or arrange for necessary accommodations that will allow the individual an opportunity to communicate to the best of their ability. Often, the communication support specialist provides services to a client in addition to the client being represented by an attorney. Attorneys and communication support specialists are trained with a different set of skills, but maintain a mutual respect for providing the client with their best opportunity to participate in their process and communicate as effectively as possible. The CSS will never give the client advice, as an attorney would, but will work to support the client in being able to discuss and understand the matters being addressed by the attorney. If people are experiencing communication barriers as a result of their disability, being provided with necessary accommodations is important, and their legal right under the Americans with Disabilities Act. There is a wide spectrum of disabilities that can, and do, impact the way a person communicates and processes information. It is important to remember, however, that each person is an individual with different life experiences, strengths, and needs. Many people have more than one disability, which can make accommodations more complex. 60% of VCSP clients have more than one documented disability. So, what is a communication support specialist? A communication specialist is an individual specifically trained to understand the communication needs of people with disabilities. A communication support specialist is not an advocate, more like an interpreter of information, or a support person that can identify necessary accommodations in order to provide a person with disabilities a fair opportunity to participate in their hearing or meeting. A CSS never gives legal advice. So how do VCSP services work? We break down our services into a before, a during, and an after. A half an hour pre-meeting, the hearing itself, and a half an hour post-meeting. Before every hearing, there is a half an hour pre-meeting. This is often a time when an attorney is able to meet with their client, and having the CSS present is an important support for the client. It can also be helpful for the attorney's communication efforts. During the pre-meeting, with or without the attorney present, the CSS will usually focus on some of the following: reviewing the type of meeting or hearing and purpose if that information is available, supporting the client in their effort to determine questions that they would like to ask the attorney. The CSS can also support the client in creating a list of other thoughts or comments that they would like to communicate regarding their case. The CSS will never offer input regarding the case, only support for the client's opportunity to communicate information. Reviewing the process and etiquette of the hearing or meeting and why it is important. Role play to offer the client an opportunity to practice their communication skills. Discussing needs around de-escalation and emotional support. Agreeing on verbal cues to maintain focus. If the hearing is remote, we review the technology and links needed to connect. The tools we use vary depending on the client and what they feel they need to communicate as effectively as they can. During the hearing, the role of the communication support specialist is to be supportive and to interject when necessary. When an attorney is present, it is considered best practice for the CSS to request any necessary accommodations through the attorney, unless an alternative plan has been established. The communication support specialist takes notes during the hearing to refer to during the post-meeting. After every hearing, a 30-minute post-meeting is offered and recommended. Here are some of the areas that a CSS will focus on during the post-meeting. Checking the individual's comprehension, sometimes by asking open-ended questions. Employing de-escalation techniques such as encouraging physical movement, deep breathing, or time to refocus. Reinforcing answers to questions that were posed and information that was given. Supporting the client in developing follow-up questions and helping the individual as they determine who would be best to answer those questions. This is usually the attorney if the client is represented. Reinforce understanding of what the next steps if that information was provided during the hearing or meeting. Let me explain some things about our services. Outside of the pre- and post-meeting, we never meet with individuals on our own to explain paperwork or go over the case. There must always be a hearing or meeting scheduled. VCSP serves individuals participating in civil, family, probate, and small claims court, as well as administrative proceedings and meetings. As a reminder, VCSP does not serve defendants in criminal court. Most of our work is in family court, as there is crossover in juvenile cases between court hearings, DCF meetings, and attorney meetings for individuals involved in juvenile cases. It is possible for the client to want our services in court, but not in DCF meetings, or vice versa. To receive VCSP services in court, a motion must be filed with the judge. If you would like a sample motion emailed to you, please contact the VCSP office. The court can appoint VCSP services if it is determined by a judge that there is a need, but the VCSP office will still need to confirm the individual's eligibility and acceptance of the service. Like any accommodation, it is up to the individual whether or not they opt to use our services. Once an attorney requests a communication support specialist and the motion is granted, the court will notify the VCSP office by sending an email. The court is responsible for notifying VCSP of upcoming hearings. DCF and attorneys are responsible for notifying VCSP of meetings. If an attorney or individual is informed of a change in a scheduled proceeding that involves a client supported by a CSS, it is always helpful to check to make certain that VCSP has received that information. Attorneys are welcome to request the services of a CSS for their client at attorney meetings, either on the day of a proceeding or at separate meetings. If you would like a communication support specialist present for an attorney meeting, email the VCSP office to get it on our calendar. The VCSP office takes care of the approval and administrative paperwork with the Office of the Defender General for assigned counsel and public defenders. Private attorneys may have a different process. For more information, please contact the VCSP office. All scheduling is done through the main VCSP office. We always do our best to accommodate last-minute requests, but it is best if we are given as much notice as possible so that we can assign the best CSS fit for the individual. Our communication support specialists work statewide, and depending on availability, an individual may not always have the same communication support specialist. It is extraordinarily helpful to provide feedback on this video, our services, and our specialists. You can do this by calling, emailing, or texting, or using our feedback form on our website. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for taking the time to learn about our services and for helping people with disabilities access the services they need to engage in their hearings as fully and as effectively as they are able.